I woke to the taste of plastic and winter. The ceiling above me was a pale slab with a hairline crack running corner to corner, like a stitched eyelid. Somewhere close, a compressor shuddered and sighed, and an unseen monitor exhaled a patient, measured beep, slow enough to comfort, precise enough to warn. I tried to swallow, and the tube in my throat complained. A light flared off to my left. Something metal. Someone moving in shoes that never squeaked. "Welcome back," said a voice that made the word welcome feel like a diagnosis. "You were lucky." I could not nod, so I let the beeps answer for me. A face leaned over, a nurse's cap without the cap, hair the gray of early frost, eyes that never reflected the room. A badge, Mara, though the lettering was rubbed like old teeth. "You've been through a terrible accident," she said. Small-town pileup on the ring road, concussion, thoracic contusion, mild abdominal trauma. You'll feel sore. We're keeping you for observation. Her words hit soft and stuck hard. Names fluttered. My street, my car, the sun that morning, the smell of coffee on my passenger seat. Memory skittered, found nothing, dug at the crack in the ceiling. I tried to lift my hand. A cuff caught my wrist. Not leather, not metal, something fabric that was somehow final. "It's just so you don't pull at the tube," Mara said mildly, and loosened the strap in a way that did not loosen anything. "Breathe for me." She tapped the ventilator tube. "In a few hours, we'll try without this." The room was both small and endless, a rectangle that kept repeating, bed, curtain, tray, door, like a printed pattern, almost a line, but never quite. On the wall opposite, a glass panel showed a corridor as clean as a threat. A figure in green scrubs crossed the rectangle, pushing a cart, then another. Every person wore the same expression at different sizes. "Where's—" I rasped around the plastic. "Shh." She touched my chest with 2 fingers as if listening through them. "Save it. You're in St. Augustine's. We called your emergency contact. Rest now." I closed my eyes because there was nothing else to close, and the beeping faded into a long hallway of sound. In the hallway, a gurney squealed. In the sound, a word I didn't know yet began to mean me. When I woke again, the tube was gone, though its ghost pressed on my throat. The cuff remained. A window that I hadn't noticed before claimed to be a window by failing to open. Beyond it, an unseasonal night, or a wall painted to look like weather. I was thirst and ache, stitched in places I hadn't known were torn. The monitor now counted me as if I were change after a purchase. On my wrist, beneath the cuff, a paper band, "Do not remove," a barcode, and a number longer than it needed to be. Beneath the number, in smaller print, "Oneg, Compat." I could read the letters. I could not remove their weight. The door opened. The man who entered had beautiful hands. Surgeon's hands. He used them to hold a clipboard in a way that made the clipboard feel held, not read. "I'm Dr. Harrow," he said, because of course he was. "You were fortunate. Your scans show bruising, no intracranial bleed. We'll do some follow-up labs, and you'll be out in no time." "Where's my phone?" I asked, surprised to find a voice. "Confiscated by the ambulance for data recovery," he said, and his smile apologized to my future. "Chain of evidence, crash reconstruction." I tried to picture the crash. The word reconstruction felt too architectural for a road. I remembered the sound of a horn as if someone else had heard it. "We'll get you a replacement," Mara said from the doorway, like a shadow announcing the room to itself. "Do you remember where you were going?" "Work," I said, "because people go there. The sentence ran out. "A patient whose oxygen dipped. Short-term retrograde is common," Harrow said, fitting sympathy to me as if taking a measurement. "Rest and hydration, and we'll have you sign a routine consent for blood typing. Just confirm what we already know so we can avoid surprises." He handed me a form on a board attached to a string attached to the bed. "Consent to draw and utilize blood products for typing and crossmatch," it sang, somewhere below. "Patient understands that surplus samples may be used for research." The space for a signature was generous. The pen was not. My hand drew my name like a tourist. "Excellent," he said, as if a test had been marked. "Mara will take good care of you." He left. The room remembered I was in it. Mara wheeled in a tray that had no food and a needle that had no doubt. The tube filled with my red, as if red was news. She labeled it with a sticker that matched my band. Another sticker, smaller, carried numbers with a hyphen, then 3 letters. I thought it said match, but it didn't. The letters looked alike nonetheless. "Don't worry," she said softly, and I realized I had been telegraphing. "We keep careful track." "Of what?" I meant to ask. "Of you." She smiled the way windows do in pictures. Night in St. Augustine's did not work like actual night. The lights dimmed to the shade of an aquarium. The corridor beyond the glass panel thrummed with deliveries, trays, carts, something that clinked like cutlery but wasn't. On the wall, a television hung blind. Its black rectangle reflected me as a person with a white room inside. I slept. I woke because someone else did. The curtain to my right had been drawn all day. I had assumed absence behind it, a quiet reserved for no one. Now a groan unfurled and tried and failed not to sound like a plea. Feet shuffled. The curtain did not move, but a part of me did. The voice that followed was smaller than its pain. "Dad," it said. The word hung, listening for an answer it had anticipated. The answer that came belonged to a nurse with a different name. Kate, and a gentler voice. "He's resting," she murmured. "It's best." "Will he?" The child bit the question. "Will he wake up?" "Yes." Kate lied so beautifully I wanted to learn the art. "We're giving him sleepy medicine because of the surgery." "What surgery?" "Appendix," Kate said. The word patted its feet across the floor. "A routine one." I remembered my own appendix as a story of a story. I remembered the box on my consent that I had initialed without recognizing the alphabet. I tried to shift, and the cuff reminded me I was not ready to go anywhere. I dozed and woke to wheels. The shadow of a gurney crossed the lower edge of the curtain and stalled like a thought. Someone said a name I did not catch. Someone else said, "Down to 3." A number keyed an elevator I couldn't see. The wheels gathered themselves and went away. My monitor counted me through the afterward. The after tasted like iron. In the morning, Mara brought me a cup that smelled like chicken, but looked like science. "Clear fluids," she announced. "You passed your swallow." I sipped, and the water inside the broth remembered the sea. "My neighbor," I said, because now that there was a daytime, there were neighbors. They said, "Appendix." Mara glanced at the curtain as if reading a clock. "Mrs. Ames had a rough night," she said, though the voice had been a small boy's. "Try to rest." "How long will I be here?" I asked, to confirm the time had not been surgically removed. "Not long," she said, and then added, as if practicing a different line, "Long enough." Harrow returned with day. He asked me to touch my nose with my eyes closed and to push against his hand and to lie about how much it hurt. He performed each ritual as if it created me newly. "A few more tests," he said, "and then we'll discuss discharge. Will you call my—" I fished for a word that had a name attached. Mother, partner, boss. The word came up as if dredged, clotted with circumstances. "Sister," I said because it felt sturdy. "She'll be worried." "We've left messages," he said, and his pen wrote a sentence on nothing. "Reception can help you call when we bring your effects." "Where are my—" "In a bag," he said. "Secured." Hospitals like to place your life somewhere and promise to bring it back later. A man in slate scrubs wheeled in a portable ultrasound. He gelled my abdomen, and I was suddenly a coastline. He clicked and measured and did not say anything except, "Hold." On the screen I saw the sea again, black and bright, a language more honest than words. When he finished, he wiped the cold off me with a towel, as if he were apologizing to a counter. I slept again and dreamed of the ring road, which was not a ring and not a road, but a sterile circuit I traveled while lying down. In the dream, there were exits that were also entries and signs that read, "You are here," even as the place changed. The second night was a different building. The aquarium lights had a distant green, like water remembered through a story. The corridor reflected itself infinitely. An orderly paused outside my room and looked in just long enough to make looking in seem like the job. He moved on. My neighbor's curtain breathed. At 3:17 a.m., the elevator that I could not see but could hear chimed. Nurses are quieter at night. The elevator was not. "Down to 3, someone said again, and a life agreed. In the morning, my cuff was looser. My legs had become rumors told by my torso. A phlebotomist with a constellation of tiny scars on her forearms drew more of me into tubes like narrow futures. "What are these for?" I asked. "Crossmatch," she said, and smiled like you do at a dog that has learned a trick too late. "Just to be safe." "Safe from what?" "From surprises," she said, and left. Mara came back with paperwork, which is a hospital's way of giving you stones to carry so you cannot run. The top sheet, financial responsibility and assignment of benefits. The second, updated consent to treat. The third was shorter and had at the bottom a checkbox labeled participation in donor network registry, optional. The empty box glared at the line. Someone had already checkmarked it with a flourish. My signature hovered below in a handwriting I recognized, and did not. "I didn't," I began. "You were groggy," Mara said. "We discussed it." "I would remember," I said, and the room reminded me that I wouldn't. "It's only a registry," she said soothingly. "It doesn't obligate you to anything. It's good to be a match." She tapped my wristband. "Oh, negative. Universal donor. Rare. A blessing." "I thought the blessing was AB," I began, absurdly eager to be correct in some small thing. "For plasma," she said. Different side of the mirror. Later, when she changed my IV bag, I glimpsed the label. The supplier address had no city, only a mailbox and a number sign with too many digits. The bag that replaced it had no label at all. I practiced sitting up. My head swam like a fish in the wrong river. A physiotherapist visited, showed me how to stand without becoming a mistake, then left me sitting on the bed's edge like a cliff. My feet untouched tile that had never been touched before. I shuffled to the window and discovered that it offered a flawless view of a painted hedge. On the wall, a whiteboard with a dry erase handwriting. Today's team, Mara, RN, Dr. Harrow PT, L. Cass. Goal, safe discharge under goal. Someone had written in a different hand. With too much pressure, no falls, no fever, no delays. The last item had been half erased and written again harder. Every hospital culture invents its own superstition. In St. Augustine's, they did not say the word down. They said to 3 when they meant below. On the third afternoon, a volunteer with a cart of paperbacks arrived, all their covers sun-faded in the same way, as if they had been left in a place without sun. "Something to read?" she asked. The cart had thrillers with teeth on the covers, romances with sighs, and a single non-fiction titled The Ethics of Procurement. I took a mystery and watched her wheel away, the paperbacks organized by color instead of author. "Procurement," I said aloud, and the room did not echo. I found my phone an hour later. It wasn't mine. It was a loaner in a sealed pouch that warned open only with staff. I pressed the call button and Mara arrived, unwrapping the pouch like a present. The phone already knew my name. It asked for my face. I gave it what I had. It accepted me as if acceptance were the point. "No outgoing calls at this hour," Mara said, "but you can check messages." There were 3 voicemails from a number marked private. I listened. The first was wind over a microphone, then a woman. "We're at St. Augustine's. They said to wait. Call me when—" The sentence ended in the sound of a door closing. The second, a man whispering as if the phone lay at his throat. "Match identified. Prep at 1800. Consent flagged. Resolve." The third, a hiss in which I definitely heard my own name, as if said by a machine reading a menu. "Can I call back?" I asked. "Soon," Mara said. "Let me take that for charging." She slid the phone into the pouch as if into a body bag. Rest. That night the corridor's reflection was preoccupied. The elevator chimed 3 times between 3 and 4. I dreamed I was a tray being pushed somewhere. I woke to the blood pressure cuff inflating, my arm becoming a fact. The readout pleased no one and everyone. "Fever," Harrow announced at dawn, frowning like a friend. "Not ideal. We'll hold you another 24. "Hold me," I repeated, the phrase making metal out of air. "We'll run IV cefazolin just to be safe," he said. The bag that arrived had its label angled away from me. It was then that the other curtain finally moved. The rail screeched, as if surprised to be a rail. A woman in her 50s lay beyond, hair braided in a precise way that implied a life outside. Her face had the stuporous serenity of the recently anesthetized. Her wrist bore the same band as mine. Her mouth bore the same dryness. A boy of 9 sat in the visitor chair, the previous night's voice rendered into person. He held a drawing of a house that contained more windows than rooms. "Hi," he said shyly to no one in particular. "Hi," I said, and the effort made my pulse try to leave. A man in slate scrubs appeared at once, as if the word "hi" set off a motion detector. "Let's give Mom some quiet," he told the boy gently, steering him with 2 fingers that did not quite touch. The boy nodded as if told a bedtime story and went where the fingers indicated. Ours became a texture. The room shifted half an inch to the left, and I almost fell out of it. I signed 2 more forms I did not remember requesting. The whiteboard removed no delays, and kept it anyway. When they came for me, it was after a nurse whose name tag read Adriel, but whose eyes said escort took my vitals and declared them median. Just some scans, he said, and the lie was kind, the way you lie to a dog about the vet. He released the cuff without ceremony, and my wrist felt sudden air. The gurney's sheet was fresh, and the wheel squeak faint. As we rolled into the hall, the glass panel reflected a man being abducted gently. "Which scan?" I asked, because naming makes small forts out of fear. "Compatibility," he said, and didn't. We took the elevator I had only heard. Its interior was the platonic ideal of elevators. Brushed steel, rules written in a font that meant rule, a mirror that was not. We went to 3. 3 was colder, not the temperature kind, the kind of cold that is an ethic, an agreement between surfaces. The corridor here had no windows, real or pretend. The doors were numbered in a sequence that contained its own logic. Some had lights above them, green, yellow, a red that had no warmth. We stopped outside a door that read 3 to 12, and then, lower, PROC. A small sign had a slot where a paper could be slid in and out. The paper in it read, "Ready." "Just a check," Adriel murmured. "We do this for everyone. We make sure there are no surprises." "From what?" I asked again. But the word we had both been avoiding was between us in the sterile air. Mara appeared as if invoked. "You're doing very well," she said, smoothing a non-existent wrinkle in the sheet at my knees. "We're proud of you." "Proud?" I repeated, because sometimes the echo is the only proof of voice. A woman I had not seen before joined us. Her badge said, "Coordinator," like a rank. She carried a tablet, the way a midwife might carry a heartbeat. "We appreciate your kindness," she said, and her calm was not an absence of fear, but its mastery. "A recipient has been located on site. The match is extraordinary." "Recipient," I said, and the syllables landed like instruments on a tray. "Match." "Perfect crossmatch," she confirmed. Her thumb slashed across her screen like a surgeon. "You are O-negative with HLA markers that read like a miracle. I don't say that lightly." "I don't remember agreeing," I said, though I did remember the box marked optional and my hovering name. "Most people wish to help," she said, without malice. "Most people don't get to." "I'm still alive," I heard myself say. The sentence needed a personal pronoun and could not find one. "Of course," she said, as if I'd told a joke at a wake. "We are speaking of living donation." "Kidney," I said, grasping at the least. "There are redundancies in the body. There are stories we tell about them." "One of the safest," she agreed. "Your labs are excellent. Your imaging is beautiful. Your vitals are robust." She smiled at robust, as if it were a pet. "You're young. You're healthy. You're here. This is an opportunity." I thought of the boy holding a house with too many windows. I thought of my signature practicing my name. I thought of the ring road that was not a ring. "Who is the recipient?" I asked, summoning a law I hoped existed. "A child," she said, and let the word do its work. "That is all I can disclose. The need is urgent." "No one told me," I began, because the verb felt, suddenly, like a scalpel placed in my hand that had already cut. "You were told," Mara said gently, "and you forgot. It's not your fault." She placed a hand on my forearm, just above the vein that had given itself all week. "Sometimes the body knows what to do better than the mind." "I had an accident," I said. "Shouldn't that delay?" Delays are dangerous, the coordinator said, almost tender. You'll meet with anesthesia. We'll run you through the risks. You can still say no. She angled the tablet so that the consent form's empty box faced me like a mouth. I stared at the stylus. It weighed less than obligation. Something in me wanted to run, a primal muscle twitch older than the word hospital. But I had learned my legs lived in a building that did not open doors. I had learned St. Augustine's preferred routes without exits. Time, the coordinator murmured, not to me. Adriel put his hand on the gurney's rail, ready to change verbs. I'll help, I said, because the sentence without that verb had too many consequences. Good, Mara said, and the elevator dinged again somewhere behind doors. They rolled me into 3-12. The ceiling lights here were hexagons, beehives for insects that did not exist. An anesthesia machine breathed patiently, practicing on the room. A clock had no numbers. The bed had a surrender built into it. Beyond a second glass panel, a theater waited, scalpel light bright and very calm. I recognized that room with a recognition that did not come from memory. They parked me, brakes sighing. A man with kind eyebrows introduced himself as the anesthesiologist and spoke of comfort like a priest. He listed risks, nausea, infection, awareness, death. He listed them in a rhythm that made them small enough to fit in my ear. You'll count backwards from 10, he said. Most people reach 7. Who gets to 1? I asked. He smiled. We don't keep score. The coordinator offered her tablet. The consent now was 4 pages. It used the word procurement only twice, and always in a sentence where it meant salvation. My name appeared at the bottom, waiting, somewhere in the document. The case may proceed upon verbal consent in the presence of 2 witnesses when written consent is impractical. We have time, Mara murmured, as if to contradict an earlier doctrine. I tried to think of my sister's name again, and there was a name, but it dissolved, leaving only the astonished taste of having almost remembered. I tried to think of the accident and got, instead, a hedged hedge in a window that was not. I tried to think of the boy and saw briefly a kitchen table and a construction paper sun taped to a fridge. A good kidney lasts decades. A good story lasts a night. I have questions, I said, and the anesthesiologist nodded as if there would be time. How many? The coordinator asked, and watched the clock that did not have numbers. Just 1, I said. If I say no, can I go? You can choose, she said carefully, but the choosing happens here. In the adjacent theater, the light changed temperature, almost imperceptibly, like a cloud passing across a surgical sky. Somewhere, a printer coughed forms into a tray. In the corridor, a gurney passed, wheels hushed. Count from 10, the anesthesiologist suggested softly, as if I had already agreed. The mask hovered, its rubber rim smelling of mint and engineering. I touched the stylus to the screen. My name flowed. It looked like me. It looked like a patient. Thank you, the coordinator said. The word thank had an aftertaste that would not leave. The mask kissed my face. Deep breaths, the kind eyebrows murmured. In through your nose if you can. You'll feel a little burning in the arm. The burning arrived, small and precise, a lesson in eventuality. I tried to speak, but the mask translated me into the language of compliance. The clock without numbers moved in a way that did not show. 10, I said, and heard it. 9, I said, and did. 8. My mind, ever inventive, offered me the ring road again, an exit labeled Home that turned out to be a frontage road that led back to St. Augustine's. I merged. 7, I whispered, and saw a child behind a pane of glass, coloring a house with too many windows. The house was not a metaphor, it was an address. I woke after the afterwards with a throat that had been part of someone else's sentence. The room was my room again, arbitrarily. The neighbor's curtain was open now, and the bed beyond it empty, sheets folded into a eulogy. On my side, a new ache radiated like a star with opinions. Beneath the blanket, a dressing hugged my flank. My wristband's barcode had a new sticker beside it, a date, an hour, 3 letters that did not spell relief. Mara appeared, bearing broth. "You did beautifully," she said. "How is—" I began. "Recovering," she said, and there was no pronoun. Harrow arrived with a grin you might wear after a difficult chess problem. "Textbook," he said. "Perfect perfusion, minimal ischemia. You are, in every way, admirable." "I feel emptied," I said before I could stop it. "That's the drugs," he said. "We'll refill you." The coordinator visited just long enough to say, "On behalf of the network, thank you," and place an envelope on my tray. "Insignia," the seal said, as if I had won a competition in which contestants were not told the rules. Inside, a pin shaped like a drop. By evening, I was walking, which meant choosing not to fall, while the floor moved under me. I made it to the window and back, and the whiteboard updated to "Goal Met." Underneath, in someone's private handwriting, an addition: "You are good." The elevator chimed after midnight. "Down to 3, someone said, but it sounded now like a benediction for the living. In the gray, before morning, while the building forgot to remember me, I found the envelope again, and underneath it a second one that did not have a seal. The flap had been tucked rather than glued. Inside, a copy of my consent. On the last page, beneath my signature, another line had been printed in a smaller font, almost a footnote. "Patient acknowledges that additional tissues may be procured if necessary to ensure recipient outcome." I ran my finger over the words and felt a ridge where none was. Beneath the blanket, my flank throbbed in agreement. There was a taste of copper under my tongue that had not been there before. As if I had been kissing a spoon, sleep took me, then spit me into afternoon. A volunteer brought flowers that smelled like the idea of spring. I lurched to the bathroom to see my face. It looked like someone who had given something and was waiting for the receipt. On the 3rd day post-op, they talk discharge in the way hospitals talk about weather, as if it were a plan. Mara helped me dress in clothes that were mine because they fit. Harrow shook my hand with hands that always belonged to him. The coordinator did not return. The boy did, briefly, in the corridor, walking between 2 green shapes. He looked at me as if at a window that wasn't there and lifted his drawing. The house now had a tree, and under the tree, a dog that had been added in a hurry. At the exit desk, a woman named Val processed me with the kindness of a cashier. "Sign here and here," she said, "and initial these. Your prescriptions are electronic. You'll receive follow-up calls." A man in a jacket too black to be anything but official stood near the door, reading a text that contained the world. I stepped into a lobby that could have been in any building. The air smelled different, the way foil smells when you peel it from a cup. Outside, the sky was the right size. Cars made car noises. A taxi idled expectantly, drivers staring at a middle distance people learn from cities. The hedge along the curb was real, complete with a wrapper blown into it like a flag. I looked back at the glazed facade of St. Augustine's and saw my reflection for the first time. It was smaller than I remembered, but otherwise accurate. My phone returned with a "We found it in your effects after all," vibrated. A number with too many zeros texted. Follow-up confirmed. Secondary procurement, scheduled pending labs. Thank you for your continued generosity. Another, a new appointment appeared on a calendar I don't remember synchronizing. Location, St. Augustine's. Department, ophthalmic PROC. The description field had a single word, corneas. I touched my eyes, absurdly, as if checking for ownership. The world went briefly soft, the way it does when you stand too quickly. In the taxi, the driver said nothing because I said nothing. We merged into ordinary life, and it held me for 3 blocks. Like water holds a thrown stone until weight remembers. My vision feathered at the edges and then returned, contrite. I pressed the envelope with the pin until it left a droplet shape in my palm. Back at my apartment, the keys remembered my door. In the mirror in my own hallway, the stitches under my shirt existed with a dignity I had not earned. On the table, a vase held flowers I did not recall ordering. Attached, a card in handwriting that copied itself perfectly. You are good. I slept in my bed and dreamed of a ring road that was the right shape, and then a different dream where I walked through corridors and every door led back to a lobby where a man in a black jacket typed the weather into his phone. The phone woke me. Private number, I answered. "Hi," said Mara's voice, distant enough to be safe. "Just checking in. How are you feeling?" "Tired," I said. "That's normal. Take your antibiotics. Stay hydrated. We'll see you for labs on Tuesday." "I didn't schedule." "We scheduled for you," she said, and the gentleness made it both better and worse. "It's best to avoid delays." "Why ophthalmic?" I asked, trying the word as if it belonged to me. A pause the size of a blink. "There's a recipient," she said, "the way weather sometimes just happens. A child. The match is unusual." "I need my eyes," I said and tried to laugh, but the laugh broke its ankle. "I need to see." "You'll still see," she said softly, "just differently." After the call, I stood in my kitchen and watched sunlight move across the counter as if measuring it. Dust sharpened in the air and then blurred. I took the pin from its envelope and held it up. The droplet reflected me as a smear. In the evening, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw a corridor in fisheye. A courier held a small cooler with a neutral logo. When I didn't open, he slid a package through the slot that was somehow big enough. Inside, a home phlebotomy kit pre-labeled with my barcode. A note: "Please self-collect and leave on doorstep tonight by 22. Thank you for your continued generosity." I did not open the kit, and yet, at 21:58, there it was on the mat, cold air studying it. I did not remember bleeding, and yet a bandage bloomed under my elbow like a winter flower. When I returned to bed, the room dimmed and then dimmed again, as if the light was learning how. On the ceiling above my pillow, a crack ran diagonally, like a stitched eyelid. In the morning, a message waited. Labs perfect. Procurement scheduled. Down to 3. I stood in the bathroom and stared at my eyes. They stared back with a patient, measured beep. The whites were white, the irises their usual compromise between green and brown. I tried to imagine the world without them, and the world obliged briefly. Outlines, pressures, the hum of refrigerators, the shape of wind on the face. The pin lay on the counter, a drop of metal. I pinned it to my shirt, and it tugged slightly, a gravity of its own. When the taxi came again, I said nothing, and so did it. Anton, Augustine's rose out of the city like an explanation you had not requested. The lobby was the same size as last time. Val had a different lipstick. The man in the black jacket had typed a different weather. Mara met me before I could remember how to ask for her. "You came," she said, genuine delight in the verb. "You asked," I said, and we did not mention the difference between asking and asking. She led me not to the ward, but to a small room with 2 chairs and a table and a lamp that had learned how to be a sun. The consent waited, the stylus waited, the clock without numbers performed restrained. "This is not forever," she said, and for a moment I believed her. "It could be," I said, and for a moment I was sure. "Count from 10, the kind eyebrows would say later, or perhaps had already. I would say 10, 9, 8. And then there would be a ring road again, and a house with too many windows, and a boy drawing a tree under which a dog waited patiently. Someone, somewhere, would open their eyes in a room that was a different room because of me. Mara would say thank you and mean it. The coordinator would write a note. Harrow would close a small, perfect incision and admire it privately. Val would update a ledger only she could see. The man in the black jacket would type promising into his phone. Outside, the hedge with the wrapper would rustle in a wind only it understood. I signed because the building was designed so that people signed. I breathed because the mask wanted me to. I went down to 3 because all the routes led there. And if I woke into a world made of pressure and shapes, I would still be in St. Augustine's, which has so many windows, most of which do not open. And if I did not wake, the ring road would loop and the elevator would chime, and the boy would color inside the lines until the lines moved. Sometimes I think I never had an accident. Sometimes I think St. Augustine's is the accident, and I was delivered to it as a donor might be, escorted gently, thanked in advance. The pin on my shirt is heavy enough to keep me from floating. The crack on the ceiling is almost closed. The consent says optional in a font that knows it is lying. Count with me, they will say, and I will. Tell me, what would you do in my place?